My child. It's freezing out there. Tunde, I'm just asking to stay for one night, please.
Get out of my house! Right now!
I'm sorry for bringing you into this world with nothing.
Open the door! We need to talk to you! Your mother, she collapsed in front of the neighbor's house.
Years ago, in a poor village near Ibadan, mornings there had no alarm clocks, only the raspy crow of roosters and the smell of wood smoke drifting above low tin roofs. A red dust road cut through the village, dry and choking in the summer, thick with mud in the rainy season. But every day it carried the quiet footsteps of a woman who never stopped walking. She was Mama Aid, the banana fritter seller at the market. Before dawn even had a chance to brighten the sky, she would balance a woven basket on her head and walk barefoot down that dusty road. Her feet had grown so calloused that heat and cold no longer mattered, only the habit of enduring. At a tiny corner of the market, she lit a small fire, poured the oil, and dropped in slices of banana. The sizzling sound was like the breath of a life that was poor, but persistent. Mama Aid didn't have many stories to tell about herself. Her entire world fit inside a rusted tin roof house and a single son, Tund. Tund was the reason she woke up every morning, the reason she stood on aching legs until sunset, the reason she smiled, even when all she had left were a few crumpled coins. Every evening, as the sun dipped low, she would see Tund waiting at the end of the road, a thin boy in patched clothes, but with eyes that always shined. One rainy season, Tund felt terribly sick. Fever burned him up. She carried him, mile after mile, to the clinic. The nurse said they needed money for medicine. Mama Aid bowed her head for a long time, then silently took off her wedding ring, the last memory of a marriage buried long ago. When she placed it into someone else's hand, her heart cracked, but she didn't cry. She only thought, my son must live. As Tund grew older, he said he wanted to go to school. Mama Aid nodded immediately, knowing it meant smaller meals. Maybe none at all for her. Some days, she drank only water and watched him eat the tiny portion of rice, and somehow, the hunger hurt less than the thought of letting him down. Every night before sleep, she would smooth back his hair and whisper, softly, as if afraid her hopes might slip away if they hurt her, I don't need a long life. I just need you to become someone. It wasn't advice. It was her entire existence poured into a single promise. And then, Tund did become someone. Tund left the village and moved to Lagos. The city greeted him with traffic-choked streets and skyscrapers so tall they swallowed the sky. Lagos didn't care where he came from, only how fast he could move. And Tund moved fast. He succeeded quickly. A big house rose in a wealthy neighborhood. A shiny car waited at the gate every night. A beautiful wife stood beside him, her perfect smile made for admiration. People called him boss. That name echoed at parties, in business meetings, in the soft clinking of champagne glasses. It made Tund stand taller. It made him forget the red dust that once clung to his feet. Far away from the city, Mama Aid's old phone would ring once a week. She always asked the same question, her voice tiny and careful. Are you doing well? On the other end, Tund would sigh. The city's noise always pushed between them. Don't call so often, I'm busy. She would pause, just for a heartbeat. Then whisper, all right. I just wanted to know. Each call ended quicker than the last. The distance between them was no longer measured in miles, but in the speed of their lives drifting apart. One day, Mama Aid decided to visit Lagos. She wore her cleanest clothes, carried her old fabric bag, and stood at the gate of that grand house, afraid to step inside. People passing by stared at her, curious, then dismissive. A rural woman lost in a polished world. Inside, the house was so large that her footsteps sounded apologetic. Everything was bright, new, and painfully unfamiliar. Tund's wife looked her up and down, displeasure clear in her eyes. You don't belong here. The words fell softly, but cut like steel. Mama Aid lowered her head. She didn't argue. She just stood there, clutching the bag strap as if letting go would make her disappear. Tun stood beside them. He heard every word. He understood every wound, but he said nothing. Not because he didn't know right from wrong, but because staying silent was easier than standing up. Because protecting his comfort mattered more than protecting the one who had protected him all his life. That silence was the first knife. Christmas Eve. Tun's house glowed like a dream built from glass and light. Christmas strings wrapped around the staircase, reflecting off deep red wine glasses. Laughter filled the living room, blending with polite toasts and steady holiday music, like the heartbeat of a perfect party. Well-dressed guests raised their glasses, calling Tun by a friendly name, the boss, the success story, the man who seized every opportunity. In that glittering picture, Mama Aid stood quietly in a corner. She didn't know where to rest her eyes. The house was too wide, the ceiling too high, everything so polished that she feared touching anything. Her frail fingers tightened around a glass of water, the only thing she dared to hold among trays of expensive drinks and shining cutlery. Light fell onto her graying hair, revealing every silver strand, every year she had carried from that red dust road back home. She saw her son in the center of the crowd, confident smile, straight shoulders, a suit that fit perfectly. For a brief moment, she saw the little boy he once was, the child who waited at dusk for his mother to return, who fell asleep on her back during the rain. Her heart tightened, pride tangled with loneliness. When Tund walked past, she gathered all her courage. Her voice soft, trembling, afraid she'd shatter the beauty around him. "Merry Christmas, my son." The words fell between music and laughter, fragile as a leaf. She waited. One glance back, one smile, one tiny reply would have been enough. She had stood there all evening just to say that single sentence. Tun stopped. He frowned. "You're embarrassing me." No one else around heard it, but to Mama Aid, the words struck like a blunt, breaking sound. She lowered her head, instinctively, as if she had committed an unforgivable mistake. The water glass trembled in her hands, the surface rippling, then stilling, just like her heart. Tun's wife approached. She didn't raise her voice. She leaned in close, sweet enough not to draw attention, sharp enough to cut deep. "Get her out of here. No argument. No explanation." Tun took his mother by the arm, firm and practiced, the gesture of a man used to making decisions. He led her through the living room, past curious and deliberately averted eyes. Mama Aid followed slowly. She didn't ask why. She didn't resist. Her whole life had been spent walking behind her son. The door opened. Cold air rushed in, carrying the smell of night and silence. Mama Aid stood on the step, still trying to understand, when a single push, not rough, but enough, sent her stumbling outside. The door shut. The sound was soft, but absolute. Inside, Christmas music continued to play. Glasses clinked. Laughter never paused. No one wondered where the quiet woman in the corner had gone. Outside, Mama Aid stood alone in the Christmas night. Light from inside spilled over her for just a second, then vanished as the door sealed shut. She pulled her thin coat tighter, her breath shaking into the cold air. She didn't cry. She simply stood there, listening to something break inside her, too soft for the world to hear. And Tun turned back to his party, not knowing he had just closed the only door that could ever lead him home. Midnight. The house had grown quiet after the long Christmas party. Wine glasses were left on the table, Christmas lights still glowing, but dimmer now, as if they too were tired. Tun sat alone in the living room, loosening his tie, exhaling a heavy breath. Outside, Lagos rested beneath the rare chill of a December night. Then, a knock on the door. Not polite. 3 sharp, heavy pounds. Tun frowned. Annoyance flashed in his mind. She's back. He marched to the door, hand gripping the knob, ready to snap. The door swung open. It wasn't Mama Aid. 2 police officers stood before him, red and blue lights cast in harsh colors across their stern faces. Before Tund could speak, one of them said, low and direct, "We need you." Your mother collapsed in front of the neighbor's house. Tund's world stopped. One breath stuck in his chest. He ran outside, no coat, no shoes. The cold night cut into his skin, but he felt nothing. Across the street, ambulance lights flickered. On the stretcher, Mama Aid lay still, so thin that even the blanket covering her seemed oversized. Her breathing, shallow, fragile. Her silver hair, tousled by the wind. Tund stepped closer, heart pounding out of control. He called her name. She did not answer. A medic adjusted the blanket, and something slipped from Mama Aid's frail hand. An old envelope, edges worn and softened by time. Tund grabbed it, his hands shaking so badly he needed both to open it. Inside, neatly folded papers. Documents proving the sale of her only piece of land back home. The land where she once fried bananas, where she watched her son grow. And money, a small bundle held together by an old rubber band. Tund froze. He recognized the exact amount. It was the money he had secretly lost in a failed business deal. The debt no one else knew he owed, not even his wife. At the bottom of the envelope, a tiny note, handwriting shaky. The ink smudged as if written in cold and exhaustion. "I was afraid you would lose everything. So I sold the rest of my life." Tund fell to his knees beside the stretcher. For the first time in years, he wasn't the boss. He wasn't the man in control. He was a son, holding the hand that had carried him through every storm. The heart monitor beside them let out one long, thin beep, a sound that stretched, then flattened, then faded. No shouting, no chaos. Just a hollow space opening inside Tund, deeper and colder than any Christmas night. His mother was gone. On Christmas Eve, the door had opened again, but the person waiting outside was no longer there. Christmas morning, faint daylight slipped through the tall glass windows, falling onto a cold, empty floor. The house was so large that Tund's footsteps sounded like those of a stranger. The Christmas lights were still on from the night before, tiny bulbs blinking slowly, patiently, as if waiting for someone to wake up and turn them off. Gifts were neatly arranged beneath the tree. Wrapping papers untouched, not a single crease. No laughter, no voices calling each other to open presents. Only silence, heavy enough to press against Tund's chest. He sat on the sofa, arms limp at his sides. The suit jacket from last night hung over the chair, the faint smell of wine and perfume lingering in the air. He looked around the room, waiting for something small, a sound, a familiar figure, but nothing came. On the table was a half-finished glass of water. He suddenly remembered another trembling hand holding a similar glass in a corner of this very room. A tiny memory, and still enough to make his heart tighten. Tund stood and walked toward the front door. He stared at the doorknob for a long moment, as if it could answer the question he was too afraid to ask. Outside, Christmas morning sunlight lay quietly across the street. Everything looked normal, cruelly normal. He turned his back to the door, his voice breaking in the emptiness. "I'm sorry." The words fell to the floor, swallowed by silence. No echo, no reply. No one left on the other side of the door to listen, to forgive, to smile, and say everything would be okay. Tund sank to the floor, leaning against the closed door. For the first time, he felt the true coldness of this house, a place that had everything, except the one thing he had lost. He finally understood. Christmas doesn't end when the lights go out or the party ends. It ends when the last person waiting for you is gone. Christmas isn't the lights. Christmas is a mother waiting at the door. First time, he felt the true coldness of this